So first of all, welcome to Campus Colosum. This is a camp I discovered last year. They're amazing people. It's filled with neuroscientists, smart people like Giannis over here and many others. So consciousness, I think a lot of people understand what that is here. Coma is a disorder of consciousness, right? So I think so that's the starting definition. Let me, as a profession, what should be our mission, all right? What should be our moonshot, project? And they said, and they decided coma would be it, because a lot of head injury results in coma, and they really know nothing about it. So it's kind of this overarching problem that neurointensivists face, right? And at the meeting, when they announced it to the society, I was in there, and they said, look, we can't solve this as just a profession. We need help from a much wider audience. And they said two things. They said we need community and we need creativity. And I said, where's the best place for community and creativity, right? Burning Man, right? And so I proposed we do a talk at Burning Man, and of course they all laughed, but that's what led to this talk, is bringing a tough problem to some amazingly creative people like you folks and like my panelists here. And we're going to see where we get with this talk.
And we're trying to find out the mechanisms of consciousness. Like, how does your brain generate consciousness? Where does it come from? Is it like a particular region in your brain that generates consciousness, and then maybe if it gets knocked out, you become a philosophical zombie that doesn't have consciousness but maybe behaves normally otherwise? And the way I study it is I use ambiguous stimuli. So I focus on studying it using visual stimuli. And many of you have probably seen the phase vase illusion. Or if you want, over there we have these red Xeon goggles. If you put them on, you will see a stimulus there where your perception switches. So it's always the same image, but your perception of it switches between one interpretation or another. And in my opinion, that's the best way to distill neural correlates of consciousness, because basically you have the physical input fixed. It's always the same image, but your conscious perception flips from one way to another. And so we're trying to figure out, when your conscious perception switches, when your brain generates a new conscious percept or interpretation of the world, where does it happen first?
So when we think about family members, the two questions I get are, when a loved one's in the ICU, in a coma, the family member will always ask, when will they wake up? And what will they be like when they wake up? And it is very hard to answer that, because it very much depends on the reason why they're in the coma. And it also depends on a lot of ethical considerations around what that question means. So when you say, what will they be like, or when will they wake up, I'm really curious about the they, and who they are and what's important to them. Because I'm thinking about a patient I had just recently who was at the far end of Dick's beautiful diagram of coma, where it was one hair away from brain death. There's a very complex exam a patient goes through to define when they're actually brain dead. And they failed one of the questions on the questionnaire, so they were just shy of brain death. They were actually able to form some independent breaths on their own without being on a ventilator. So they were technically alive. And we're all thinking, there's not likely for recovery here. They're pretty at the end of the scale. And the family wants to know, when will they wake up? What will they be like when they wake up? And so my question to them is, well, what's important to the patient? What do they care about? And what does alive mean to them? And what's a meaningful life? And the response I got, which surprised me, was they are happy to live as long as they can watch the World Series every year. So the question they asked me was, will they ever be able to open their eyes again? And I think that's probably pretty likely, because we have some brainstem function. They're able to form some breaths, so they may be able to eventually, with some recovery, open their eyes. And that was enough for them to continue care. Whereas someone else may say, if they can't return to work, that's not a meaningful life to them. If they can't interact with their kids, it's not meaningful. So recovery is very much dependent on the underlying cause of coma, and also who the person is that is going to be recovering from it.
What I want to do now is I want to go back to the reason we're here is this Curing Coma campaign, all right? This 20-year moonshot effort to try to make some progress in this area to answer the questions that Deb brought up. I mean, and again, it's a very difficult thing because we don't know a lot about the brain, right? So the things that, so this campaign identified 4 areas initially where they want to work, and I'm going to just go through those real quickly, and then tell you what's going on in there. So the first thing they want to do is, when you're studying these subjects, particularly one that's the problem's is ages old, and there are people studying it all over the world. The nomenclature tends to get really fuzzy. So somebody calls something this, somebody calls something that. So the first thing they want to do is harmonize the nomenclature. So everybody around the world is going to call this symptom that, right, and nothing else. And so there's this thing called the common data elements that we've been participating in to try to homogenize that. So we're going to create the language for that. The second committee is on mechanisms. So it's the kind of thing that Yannis does, and probably applied more to comatose patients. The third one is on prognostication, and see if we can get a feature set of the comatose patient, and then project where they're going to be. So trajectories and stuff, and that's what Mark's going to talk a little bit about there. And then the last one is, can we actually, this is probably the most difficult one, is can we reverse coma? All right, so they have a committee there to, can we come up with a drug or something that can actually reverse coma?
You never get to 100% probability of the next earthquake. It's never certainty, because nature is variable, and we have this sort of thing called aleatory variability, which is randomness. And I think, in the coma type space, you've got lots of uncertainty, even though you've got a fair bit of data. But the uncertainty of what sort of level of coma, I mean, I'm speaking hugely out of my field, but just in terms of it being relatively, it's data driven, and it is quite, there's a lot of it. You can't say for certain when you're going to come out of that coma, and I can't say for certain exactly when the southern San Andreas fault is going to rupture, but it has quite a high probability.
So let me just pick up on one thing that Mark said. I was giving a talk at some meeting I was invited to in Lake Como in Italy, and I was following this neurosurgeon, and my talks are always on monitoring and all that, and he said something to me that was pretty telling. So he's a neurosurgeon at a major hospital in Boston, and he says, when a head trauma patient comes in, I can manage what I can measure, and then I have to let Mother Nature do the rest. And that's where we are with coma. So the goal is to see if we can measure more, right? And that's what Mark was saying, all right? If we can measure more about, the whatever the big words you used, all right? The plate tectonics or whatever. If we can measure more of that, we can predict more.